Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining me. This month, broadcasting from the mystical moon here in Naples, Florida. I've had a great trip meeting and sitting with everyone and just talking about all the great things that we're all experiencing and everything that's unfolding for us, especially on our spiritual journey. You know, we're very much at a time where many of us can accelerate on that spiritual journey. So I always encourage everyone, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself that will allow that to happen, certainly honor that within yourself and recognize what Spirit is sharing with you about your own personal spiritual journey and how you need to advance and whatever it is that you may need to release so that you can continue on that journey. We're at the end of April today. This weekend on May 3rd, we have a full moon, and this full moon is in the sign of Scorpio. You know, wherever Scorpio resides in our charts, and I'm always encouraging everyone to recognize that even though we may be born, during the time when the sun is in a particular sign, all the signs of the zodiac do exist in our astrological charts, all the signs of the zodiac, as well as all the planets in our solar system. And wherever Scorpio exists in our chart, whatever house, whatever sector of our chart that is connected with Scorpio, certainly that is actually one of the most significant areas of our lives where we need to release fear. Scorpio is a water sign. It's most associated with transformations and transitions. And certainly, whatever part of our lives that we experience fear is where we can experience some of our greatest transformations. You know, Scorpio is a water sign. It is one of the most psychically sensitive signs. All the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are very connected with the psychic realm. However, with the sign of Scorpio, because it also connects with fear, it can generate the potential of a lot of negative psychic experiences, if you will. Around the time of this full moon, we may notice that a lot of fear is being projected. A lot of what might be happening in the outside world may be projecting a lot of fear on us. It may demonstrate fear. However, whenever it is that we can recognize where fear exists and we shed the light on that, because with Scorpio, there can potentially be a tremendous amount of darkness. However, whenever we shed light on wherever it may be dark, and in our charts, wherever Scorpio exists, there may be some darkness. Again, there might be some fear. The more that we can shed light onto those matters, onto those subjects, it will just allow us to advance so much more on our spiritual journeys. I'm going to encourage you to recognize during the time of this coming full moon where fear might be creeping up, what you might need to recognize where fear may still exist in your lives, to shed light on those matters. Really recognize, embrace that, choose to look at that and choose to release and let it go. And you may recognize that you could certainly be making a quantum leap in your own personal spiritual evolution, especially at this time of this full moon. Also, too, I'm going to encourage everyone to really surround yourself with the element of protection, because around the time of the full moon, there may be a lot of fear being projected out into the world. There may be a lot of negativity being propelled forward. We always want to recognize how we can certainly protect ourselves. Just because something happens in the outside world does not mean that we need to be a victim of that. It doesn't mean that we need to allow that energy to interfere with our own well-being, as long as we are aware of what is happening. Certainly, we would always benefit from asking for protection, from surrounding ourselves with protection. However, when there are certain periods where the negativity, that energy is heightened, we need to that much more be aware to keep ourselves protected, and to certainly very much so keep ourselves grounded. So I'm going to suggest that around this coming full moon, just be very aware of the possibilities of the surge of this energy to keep yourself protected from any negative influences, especially if you find that you have a very high psychic sensitivity. There have been many of us becoming much more aware of our psychic sensitivity. Certainly we are all psychic. I've talked about this many times before, how we are all connected to spirit. We are all very psychic. We all have that sensitivity. However, some of us have a heightened sensitivity. Some of us are a little bit more aware of that sensitivity. Because of whatever it is that we are here to experience, have a greater connection with that. And at this time, we want to be aware of certainly those connections, how we're advancing with our awarenesses in all of this, our connections with spirit, but also too that we need to be very protected from any negative interferences. And I'm going to suggest that at the time of this full moon, really be aware to do that for yourself. Allow yourselves to incorporate in some way practices of protection from negative energy. And it doesn't necessarily pertain to those of us who do this sort of work in just being in a conventional office environment. We can be surrounded by a lot of negativity. So certainly we want to be aware to protect ourselves from any of those influences. Our full moon this month is on May 18th, and incidentally, the day after the full moon, the new moon is on May 18th. The day after the new moon, our friend Mercury begins its next retrograde period. Certainly, again, we're talking about fear. We don't want to project fear. Just because Mercury is going retrograde doesn't mean that we want to project fear. We want to be afraid of what's happening, or be unsettled or uncertain because of what is happening. All the planetary cycles, all the planetary phenomena, all that has benefit for us when we recognize what that benefit is. Overall, just in general, whenever Mercury is retrograde, it's just a time of reflection. It's a time to review. I always suggest being aware of the RE words during the time of a Mercury retrograde. We want to reflect, we want to review, we want to revisit what we may not necessarily have been needing to pay attention to that we need to pay attention to. We want to recognize whatever we need to recognize about ourselves, and we want to just go within and reflect. This Mercury retrograde is actually, it's in the sign as Gemini, the sign that Mercury has rulership over. Gemini is a sign most associated with communication. So we may notice that during this Mercury retrograde specifically, communications or the lack thereof might be heightened at this time. So we just want to be that much more aware, to be very clear with our communication, that the possibility of miscommunication will certainly be out in the world. We may use this time to really reflect on our own ability to communicate, and reflect on how we communicate with others, and perhaps to approach our communication from a place of love. Allow ourselves to reflect on how with our words we can express love in all parts of our lives, how we can become much more aware that through communication we can certainly express love, but also raise the vibration of ourselves and others through very powerful, empowering words. Before, when I was talking about the sign of Scorpio, Scorpio is also the sign that's so very much so associated with empowerment, especially empowerment of the self, ourselves. And in this time, overall, we're really being given the opportunity to recognize how we need to empower ourselves, so that we can certainly change our lives for the better, but also empower others as well. As I said, our new moon this month is on May 18th. It's in the sign of Taurus. Taurus really connects with our creature comforts. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with having material things. However, I would suggest that during this time to really reflect on being detached from anything in the physical world. The more that we advance on our spiritual journey, the more that we recognize that the material things have very little meaning. And there's nothing fundamentally wrong with having the desire and having possessions, the physical possessions. However, when we misplace the value in those objects, that's when perhaps we're not necessarily having a heightened spiritual experience. As I said, Taurus connects with the creature comforts. Taurus connects with the material things. Taurus is also reflected in the income that we generate. You know, it's so ironic how the less we connect with money and material matters, the more that money will come to us. I would suggest that during the time of this new moon, perhaps incorporate having a less of a need to have the material, the possessions, and also if there's any unhealthy attachments to money, anything monetary, allow yourself to release and disconnect from those attachments. And the more that you disconnect from that, the more that you will actually receive all those things. It's so interesting how spiritually there is such a dichotomy with all of this, that the more that we let go, the more that we actually receive. Also, too, you know, I would encourage the understanding of it's not only good to give, but it's also good to receive, and not one is greater than the other. Especially when we can recognize to create a balance with the giving and the receiving. Allow yourselves to give from a place of love, but also I would suggest allow yourselves to receive from a place of love, and perhaps that's something else to incorporate during this new moon that we have on May 18th. I'm going to also suggest that just to backtrack a little bit, on May 11th is the a quarter moon. It's in the sign of Aquarius. Sometimes Aquarius generates a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. So I would suggest around May 10th, 11th, 12th, around that time, just really be aware to keep yourself grounded. Just be aware of any surges of energy that you might experience during that time for yourself, just in the world around you. Be very aware to keep yourself grounded. I'm always encouraging everyone to keep yourselves grounded. You know, keep the energy in your homes grounded so that you're not short-circuited by any excessive information that might be out in the world. Around the middle of the month, we may notice there's a lot of kinetic energy, you know, going on up there as well. As I said, on May 19th, Mercury will begin its retrograde phase, and it will be retrograde until June 11th. Now, we're not completely out of the retrograde phase until June 27th, even though it goes direct on June 11th. Until it hits the point where it went retrograde, we're not completely out of the retrograde experiences. So just, you know, proceed with caution until June 27th. After June 27th, then, you know, everything is moving full force. Mercury will be fully moving in its orbit, and then there's a lot of whatever it is we're reflecting on during the Mercury retrograde. That's when we begin to receive the clarity. When Mercury goes direct, we begin to receive a tremendous amount of clarity of whatever it is that we are reflecting on during the time of the Mercury retrograde. Again, you know, during retrograde, don't sign any contracts. You certainly don't want to purchase a new vehicle, especially since it's retrograde, since Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Gemini. So once again, I just want to say thank you for everyone who has come out to see me at the Mystical Moon. We're at the end of April. I'll be here for a couple of more days. I don't know, my availability could be very limited. However, you know, if you really need something, just kind of reach out to Lori. The girls here, they'll set things up for you. So again, thank you, Lori, for welcoming me to the Mystical Moon, giving me this opportunity to share my insights at this, you know, in this forum. So until next month, stay in the light. Always stay in a place of love. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Generate the love. Spread the love. Let's offset any negativity that might be out in the world, not only during this time, but always. Stay well. Blessed be, and I'll see you next month. Be well. Bye-bye.